The DC Extended Universe wasn't even really a thing when Man of Steel was released in 2013, and whereas Iron Man was always supposed to launch a shared world for Marvel Studios, Superman's origin story being a launching platform for something bigger was never really in the cards. In fact, it wasn't until Comic-Con a couple of years later when Batman vs Superman was announced that the DCEU started taking shape, and it's since been something of a rough ride for Warner Brothers. While the Marvel Cinematic Universe spawns hit after hit, the response to many of the DC Comics adaptations has been mixed, with questionable creative decisions and a number of big mistakes. That may actually be an understatement for some of these, because not only are they big mistakes, they're downright unforgivable. They should never have been allowed to happen, and had they not, the DCEU would probably be in a much better position than it is today. Sure, things are slowly starting to look up for this shared world, but undoing the damage caused by these blunders is no easy feat, and the ramifications are likely to continue being felt for some years to come. Whatever mistakes potentially come next, however, surely can't be as bad as these. I am Kirsten from World Culture, and these are 10 biggest mistakes in the DC Extended Universe that we can't forgive. Number 10. Superman, coward. Man of Steel offered an overhauled origin story for Superman, revealing that this version of Clark Kent didn't suit up until his late 20s/early 30s. That didn't paint a picture of someone desperate to be a superhero, and it was the way that he allowed his father, Jonathan, to sacrifice himself which really proved to be a sticking point for a lot of fans. With a tornado tearing through Smallville, Jonathan rushed to save the family dog, leaving Clark to protect his mother. However, when he became trapped and stuck standing in the path of that natural disaster, he shook his head and stopped his son from saving him. Why? Well, to stop the world from discovering that he has superpowers, but it was a movement which simply did not work. There was a myriad of ways that Clark could have stopped his father from dying, and this just made the future Superman look like a coward. Not to mention a character it was hard to root for when he did eventually bother to don that iconic costume and cape for the first time. Number 9. Wonder Woman heads into the past. 2017's Wonder Woman was a good movie, and it's going to be tough for the upcoming sequel, Wonder Woman 1984, to top that No Man's Land sequence. However, while there was never really anything wrong with Patty Jenkins' origin story for Diana Prince, heading into the character's past was a mistake in a lot of different ways. When Wonder Woman was introduced in Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, she was a mysterious figure who had clearly been hiding for a long time. While a solo outing could have addressed her time in Themyscira and what brought the hero into man's world, it didn't need to be a solid 2 hours, and picking up with Wonder Woman in the present day had a lot more storytelling potential. This is a mistake being repeated by Wonder Woman 1984 too. At this point, fans are beyond desperate to see the hero operating in the present day and to explore what that means for the world, but Warner Brothers remains obsessed with sticking to her past. Not having Steve Trevor in the present is another major blunder, and simply put, this wasn't the right story to tell after Batman vs Superman. Number 8. Where's Green Lantern? Look, there's no getting around the fact that 2011's Green Lantern was a horrible disappointment of a movie, but that's no reason to take so long rebooting the character. Rumours persisted for years that a new version of the character was supposed to show up at the end of Batman vs Superman to warn the heroes about the threat Darkseid posed, but that obviously didn't come to pass. Outside of a cameo from a past Green Lantern in Justice League, there was no sign of the hero there either, and the team ended up assembling minus one of their key members. Green Lantern absolutely should have been part of the League, and not using these early DCEU movies to hit the reset button on the hero was a missed opportunity which has set the character back a number of years. That's no exaggeration either. The Green Lantern Corps movie was supposed to be released in June this year, but remains in the works. A Green Lantern series is also said to be on the way to HBO Max, but neither project appears to be a priority for Warner Brothers, and that shows a real lack of understanding with what makes this character and his world so great. Number 7. Batman, Deranged Killer. Ben Affleck's Batman was awesome, and it's a great shame that the actor and filmmaker was never given the opportunity to helm a solo outing revolving around the Caped Crusader, especially when it would have pitted the Dark Knight against Deathstroke. However, the Batman introduced in the Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice wasn't the version of the heroes fans wanted to see. While exploring the notion of a Bruce Wayne who had been fighting crime for decades and been pushed to his limits, making him a killer goes against everything the hero stands for. He's supposed to be a hero who never kills the criminals he apprehends, but this movie showed him mercilessly killing crook after crook, blowing them up, breaking their necks, and worst of all, shooting them. It made for uncomfortable viewing, as did the fact that Batman's end goal was to murder Superman in cold blood, an act that he was only stopped from committing by the convenient mention interpretation of Martha. Had this Batman been portrayed a little better, things might have actually worked out for Affleck in the role, and fans wouldn't be on the receiving end of yet another reboot. Number 6. Henry Cavill's face in Justice League. Henry Cavill is a beautiful man. In fact, his chiseled jaw is a big part of what makes him such a great Superman. With that in mind, this entry is by no means insulting his appearance. Instead, it's a reference to that unforgivable, downright laughable CGI mouth that he had in Joss Whedon's Justice League. Busy working on Mission Impossible Fallout when he was asked back to take part in the movie's reshoots, Paramount Pictures and Warner Brothers couldn't come to terms with what to do with the English actor's glorious mustache, so some brainbox clearly suggested removing it digitally. That led to his reshot scenes in Justice League standing out like a sore thumb, and resulted in a lot of creepy, weird moments like that sinister Joker-like smile that he cracks talking to Lois Lane. It's hard to believe anyone who watched the theatrical cut could be happy putting the movie in cinemas in this state, and while Whedon successfully returned hope to Superman, he looked beyond ridiculous. Not only is this a huge mistake on the studio's part, but it's quite easily one of the DCEU's most embarrassing moments as well. Number 5. 7 Deadly Sins. Shazam was pretty much DC's version of a Marvel movie, and served as a successful opening chapter for the character in the DCEU. It was a little rough around the edges though, and one big mistake came in the form of the 7 Deadly Sins. Despite being a focal point of this origin story for Billy Batson, they were all essentially nondescript CGI monsters with no sort of personality. Giving them each a voice might have been a bit too much to squeeze into a 2-hour film, but they weren't even visually distinctive, and there was no real way of distinguishing which sin was which. Mark Strong's Dr. Sivana was a great baddie, but surrounded by these forgettable creatures, the impact of his mission was lessened, and Shazam was given the feel of one of those forgettable comic book movies from the mid-2000s. That likely explains why it made only a small impact at the box office, and while a sequel is on the way thanks to its modest budget, it's perhaps not as excited a prospect as it should have been, and that apparent lack of excitement from fans could mean that this franchise struggles to stick around for the long haul, especially with Dwayne Johnson's Black Adam likely to overshadow Zachary Levi's Shazam. Number 4. That's not Doomsday. Say what you will about Zack Snyder, but he is a hardcore comic book fan, and his love of those 1980s comics by writers like Alan Moore and Frank Miller heavily inspired what he brought to the DCEU. However, it's downright baffling to see how badly he dropped the ball on Doomsday, because while he served as a very real threat to this shared world's heroes, he looked, well, he looked crap. A cross between a cave troll from the Lord of the Rings and the Incredible Hulk's abomination, this alien created from the remains of General Zod, which seemed overly convoluted, looked nothing like his comic book counterpart. As a result, the moment that he killed Superman was tough to get invested in when the lack of accuracy from a visual standpoint was so damn distracting. Batman vs Superman was a divisive movie, and making Doomsday look like he did in the comics wouldn't have really changed that. However, it might have gone some way in making this final battle truly iconic, rather than a CGI blur with a generic-looking beast, a recurring issue with the villains Warner Brothers uses visual effects to bring to life. This was a great moment ruined by some awful creative decisions. Number 3. Toning down the Joker. When Jared Leto's Joker was revealed for the first time, the response was overwhelmingly negative. It's not hard to see why, given some of the creative decisions Suicide Squad director David Ayer made with the Clown Prince of Crime, but looking beyond those, the Oscar-winning actor was never really given the chance to show what he could do. Fearful over the response to Suicide Squad after Batman vs Superman's darker tone failed to strike a chord with fans and critics, Warner Brothers ordered heavy reshoots, brought in a number of outside editing companies, and essentially tore Ayer's film to pieces. In the jumbled aftermath, most of Leto's scenes as the Joker ended up on the cutting room floor. Between that and the decision to make a standalone Joker movie without him, Leto was understandably livid, and that was the end for his version of the villain. It's a crying shame that fans didn't get to see what he could do in the role, while they were also robbed of the chance to see this Joker match wits with Batman. It ultimately led to a pretty awkward use of a stand-in in Harlequin Birds of Prey 2. Number 2. Watering down the Birds of Prey. Harlequin Birds of Prey, that was its new title after the movie underperformed with the confusing original version, was actually a pretty solid flick, albeit one fans failed to really connect with. Despite being billed as a Birds of Prey adventure, it was in reality a Harley Quinn solo outing with a handful of heroes better known to comic book readers as the Birds of Prey. Huntress Renee Montoya, Black Canary, and Cassandra Cain, aka Batgirl, were fun to spend time with, but all watered down and not really the characters from the source material. Yes, they were teased during the final few minutes, but that wasn't overly satisfying, and the fact that Barbara Gordon / the original Batgirl was MIA was unforgivable for most. This wasn't the right way to introduce the Birds of Prey to the DCEU, something proven by those all-important box office numbers. They could have starred in a series of movies and spin-offs, but the interest is no longer there, and Harlequin has also been massively devalued as a character. Ultimately, this can probably be blamed on Warner Brothers' inability to plan for the future. Number 1. Taking Justice League from Zack Snyder. A lot of the mistakes here admittedly came courtesy of Zack Snyder, but it was Warner Brothers who really screwed up when they took his version of Justice League and put it in the hands of Joss Whedon. While you might think that the Avengers director would make a far superior version of the ensemble movie, given him Snyder's unfinished work and a bunch of shoehorned in reshot scenes with a vastly different tone led to a total mess of a production. Will Zack Snyder's Justice League be any better when it debuts on HBO Max? Not necessarily, but it will be the filmmaker's unique version for the DCEU. Love or hate the decisions he made, Snyder deserved to be able to tell his story without studio interference, especially when executives only rushed the movie out to secure their eventual bonuses. Snyder deserved to be able to tell the story that he was hired for, and that opportunity is, of course, now coming to him. However, the way that Warner Brothers treated the filmmaker and Suicide Squad director David Ayer, by the sound of it, is unforgivable, and should be remembered as such regardless of them now releasing the original cut in a bid to increase subscribers to the underwhelming HBO Max. And there we go, 10 of the biggest mistakes in the DC extended universe that we just can't forgive. Now, Henry Cavill's mustache is just a little bit of a joke. I can't watch that film without just staring at his quivering little lip. But let us know what your favourite mistakes were in the DC extended universe in the comments down below. If you liked this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. But for now, I have been Kirsten Ria from What Culture, and I will see you in the next video.